Judge Morris Holbrook and everyone in the courtroom thought she was just a confused old woman, until she calmly pulled out her bar card and dismantled the entire case right in front of them. Do you understand the charges against you? Or do we need to slow this down a bit? Judge Holbrook asked, his voice dripping with condescension. He leaned back in his high-backed chair, arms crossed, smirking at the elderly woman standing alone at the defense table. His tone mirrored the one he used with arrogant young defendants who thought they could talk their way out of trouble. But this wasn't some cocky teenager with an attitude. This was a 72-year-old woman in a faded blue cardigan and orthopedic shoes, standing with her hands folded over a worn leather handbag. Her name was Eleanor Grace Whitmore. She was charged with obstruction, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest during a protest outside the Bakersfield City Hall 2 weeks prior. The prosecutor, Benjamin Locke, couldn't have been older than 30, with perfectly polished shoes and the self-assurance of someone who had never been told no. Locke threw a smirk toward the gallery. A few people chuckled. Even the stenographer fought a grin. Eleanor said nothing. Judge Holbrook tapped the folder in front of him. Says here you push an officer and encourage the crowd to resist dispersal. That's quite a charge for someone your size. Laughter rippled again. No attorney, I take it, he added. Finally, Eleanor spoke. No, Your Honor, she said. Her voice was low and composed. I'll be representing myself. Locke looked surprised, tilting his head. Ma'am, you do understand this is a criminal proceeding, right? These are real charges. I'm aware, she replied. Would you like to see my bar card? A few chuckles erupted from the back. They thought she was joking. Then Eleanor reached into her handbag, pulled out a laminated card with worn edges, and slid it across the table. Holbrook squinted, then leaned closer. State Bar of California. Attorney Eleanor G. Whitmore. Bar number 136218. Admitted July 7th, 1983. Silence fell. Eleanor adjusted her reading glasses. I earned my law degree from Howard in 1982. Passed the bar the following summer. Spent 12 years as a public defender in Detroit. Another 8 handling civil rights litigation in California. Retired in 2003, but kept my license active. Just in case. Holbrook shifted uncomfortably. Locke cleared his throat, but said nothing. Before this courtroom decides my fate, Eleanor said, turning toward the judge, I'd like to correct the record. I wasn't leading that protest. I was trying to calm it. There's a difference, and I intend to prove that, point by point. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The bailiff glanced at the judge. Holbrook picked up her bar card again, flipping it over as if it might crumble. But Eleanor Whitmore stood as steady as if she'd stood in that exact position 1,000 times before. Because she had. Your Honor, Locke finally managed, we can't verify this without. It's real, Eleanor interrupted. And I have more credentials in that bag if you need them. Holbrook hesitated, then nodded. Very well. The court recognizes the defendant as representing herself. Proceed. A murmur swept through the gallery. Eleanor gave a slight nod. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to remind them that appearances could lie. I'd like to begin with the body cam footage, she said. Or rather, the absence of it. Locke straightened. Your Honor, the footage from Officer Grundy's camera was deemed irrelevant due to a battery malfunction. That's in the official report. A battery malfunction, Eleanor repeated, turning slightly to face the jury. Conveniently starting the moment officers arrived and ending the moment I was cuffed. She began to pace. 3 officers are listed in the report. 1 body cam reviewed. The 2nd malfunctioned. The 3rd was, what did the report say? Never uploaded due to administrative error. Yet somehow, the report includes full transcripts of what I allegedly said. No audio. Just the words. Holbrook looked toward Locke. Mr. Locke, is that accurate? We submitted the available materials, Your Honor, he replied. The absence of footage doesn't negate sworn testimony. Eleanor didn't miss a beat. Then let's talk about the testimony. Officer Grundy claimed I raised my fist, shouted push forward, and locked arms with another protester. I have 6 witness statements that say otherwise. All present. All state, I stood between the crowd and the police. She placed a folder on the table. Also included, a subpoena request for Officer Grundy's prior misconduct complaints, 3 involving public protests. All dismissed. Quietly, the gallery stirred. Locke objected. Irrelevant unless they resulted in conviction. Pattern matters, Mr. Locke, Eleanor snapped. Especially when it's repeated misconduct. The judge raised a hand. Let's stay focused, Mess. Whitmore. She nodded, then held up a photo. Exhibit C, the one showing me mid-step, surrounded by officers. The prosecution claims I was advancing toward them. But zoom in. She handed a magnified copy to the clerk. Palms raised, facing outward. That's de-escalation, not aggression. No one laughed now. Locke stammered. Regardless of hand gestures, the defendant refused to disperse. Eleanor turned to him. What order, Mr. Locke? The arrest record cites an order given at 6:32 p.m. I have a time-stamped photo showing I was cuffed by 6:28. Silence. So if there's no audio, no timeline consistency, no video, and contradicting witness accounts, what exactly is left to build a case on? She didn't look smug, just tired, like someone who'd seen too many of these battles. Then she pulled out something no one expected. A USB drive. This, she said, sliding it forward, was recorded by Victor Ramirez, a student filming from a nearby garage, already submitted for review. The video flickered on screen. It showed Eleanor weaving through the crowd, palms raised. Back up. Stay calm, she shouted. She stepped between the officers and a group of teens. She wasn't aggressive. She didn't resist. She was trying to prevent panic. And then they grabbed her. The video ended. The room held its breath. Victor gave this to police the next day, she added. Never heard back. Holbrook leaned forward. Mr. Locke, did your office receive this? I wasn't made aware, Your Honor. Eleanor didn't even look at him. He gave it to a plainclothes officer. Told it wasn't needed. I guess the narrative was already chosen. The judge banged his gavel once. Then Eleanor reached for one last document. A folded police transcript. I'd like to read this into the record. From Officer Timothy Bragg, present at the protest, but not called as witness. Holbrook narrowed his eyes. Was this submitted previously? No. Obtained yesterday. Took a few favors. She read. I arrived around 6:15. Observed MS. Whitmore moving through the crowd, telling people to stay peaceful. I did not see her shout or incite. Her arrest surprised me. She paused. Locke fumbled with his pen. His team didn't arrest her, he said. Then why wasn't he included at all? Not even a footnote. Holbrook turned to Locke. Was Officer Bragg interviewed? I'd have to check. No need, Eleanor said. I checked. He filed his statement that night. Time stamped. Signed. Buried. She stepped toward the jury. This was never about disorder. It was about making an example of someone who didn't look dangerous but wouldn't fall in line. She pointed toward the darkened screen. They didn't expect me to speak. When I did, they called me disruptive. That word, disruptive, is just fear pretending to be authority. Holbrook leaned back, wearied. Your Honor, Eleanor said gently. I request all charges be dropped due to procedural misconduct, suppression of exculpatory evidence, and false testimony. He folded his hands, finger-tapping the bench. A moment passed. I'll take it under advisement and reconvene after recess. Eleanor nodded and sat. No notes. No fanfare. Just truth. When court resumed, the room was hushed. Holbrook looked pale. Locke looked defeated. Eleanor stood. There was a time, she began, when I rushed into court with 20 case files in my arms. That was 1987. Detroit. Public Defender's Office. I once defended a 17-year-old named Darius Boone, arrested for fitting a description. Walking home with a trumpet case. Nervous. She let that word linger. They found no purse. No witness. No confession. He ran because 2 unmarked officers jumped out of a van. She inhaled. I fought 5 weeks for that case. Found a time-stamped lunch receipt in his bag. Case dismissed. But he missed his final competition. Lost his scholarship. Her eyes swept the room. I didn't come here to perform. I came because if you judge me guilty based on lies, what happens to the next person who doesn't have credentials, or a video, or the nerve to speak up? Silence. Hallbrook rubbed his temple. I've reviewed the evidence, he said, voice low. This case was mishandled. The court finds continuing would be unjust. Charges are dismissed. No cheers. No noise. Just understanding. Eleanor nodded. Not in victory. In acknowledgement. Outside, the sun burned dry across the courthouse steps. Reporters waited. Microphones hovered. She said nothing. At the bottom of the steps, a few young people waited. Backpacks. Hoodies. One was Victor. Miss Whitmore, a girl, said, I want to be a lawyer. Like you. Eleanor smiled. Just slightly. Then remember what you saw. Most days, it won't look like this. It'll feel like pushing a brick wall uphill. But you push anyway. Victor asked, Can we learn from you? Eleanor paused. She didn't want to be a hero, but she saw fire in their eyes. Bring your questions. I'll bring my coffee. That evening, they met at a quiet diner. She chose the booth by the window. First thing they teach in law school, she said, how to read a case file without feeling. That's useful, but dangerous. Don't forget the people. They asked, how do you keep going when no one listens? She answered, because sometimes someone is listening, and they'll only hear the truth if you say it aloud. Victor asked, do you ever regret it? Every time I lost someone who should have walked free. But then I remember the ones who called, years later, just to say thank you. That's what matters. As they stepped outside, she turned to them. You want to change the system? Don't just study it. Challenge it. Ask better questions. Call out silence. And when someone tells you to wait your turn, ask them why they think it isn't yours yet. She looked them in the eye. I'm not a hero. I just refuse to be quiet. And with that, Eleanor Grace Whitmore walked into the twilight. Some stories don't need headlines. They need to be remembered. Because justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it wears a cardigan and walks with quiet certainty, holding the system in her hands like she's done it before. Because she has.